Filthy animals like you belong in cages, not courthouses. Those cruel words would haunt Officer Eric Reynolds for the rest of his life. It was a bright morning outside the federal courthouse, but the scene on the marble steps was pure violence. Maya Vance, a black woman dressed in a sharp civilian suit, was walking up the steps holding a leather briefcase filled with her daily court files. Before she could reach the entrance, Officer Reynolds, a cocky white cop, stepped directly into her path. He glared down at her with pure contempt and snarled, "Another ghetto rat trying to sneak in and steal." Before Maya could even speak, Reynolds raised his hand and slapped. The heavy blow struck her across the face, so hard her head snapped sideways. The sharp, metallic taste of blood instantly filled her mouth. Her briefcase flew from her grip, scattering hundreds of legal documents across the stone steps like confetti. Reynolds didn't stop there. He lunged forward, grabbed Maya by the throat, and slammed her hard against the stone wall. He twisted her arms behind her back, clicking the cold steel handcuffs around her wrists, so tight they cut into her skin. Nearby, two other officers didn't try to stop him. Instead, they stood around laughing, pulling out their phones to record the attack like it was a joke. Fighting down the searing pain, Maya squeezed her eyes shut. Through her bruised vision, she looked up at the bronze plaque mounted just 20 feet away. Chambers of Presiding Judge M. Vance. The pain in her body was nothing compared to the shock in her heart. Just steps away from her own courtroom, the head federal judge was being brutalized by the very system she served. Inside the courtroom moments later, Officer Reynolds straightened his pressed uniform, smiling with complete confidence. He had done this 100 times before, control the narrative, lie under oath, and make himself look like a hero. In his mind, the system always believed a cop over a suspect, especially a black woman with no power. Sitting on the bench was temporary Judge Whitmore, an elderly man who looked distant and unbothered. "Your Honor," Reynolds began, using his most practiced, respectful voice. "I was conducting routine security when I spotted a suspicious individual attempting to breach the courthouse." He pointed toward Maya, who was sitting at the defense table in handcuffs, a dark purple bruise blooming across her left cheek. The defendant was acting erratically, refused to provide identification, and became aggressive when asked to follow standard security procedures. Judge Whitmore nodded approvingly. "And what did you observe, Officer Reynolds?" "Sir, she was dressed inappropriately for court and carrying suspicious documents that looked stolen. When I approached her, she attacked me verbally with profanity and threats. She kept screaming that she was someone important, the classic excuse criminals use to avoid accountability." In the gallery, Officers Palmer and Griffin exchanged smirked looks. They had heard Reynolds tell this exact same lie dozens of times. Same script, different victim. Did she resist arrest? Judge Whitmore asked, optionally and violently. "Your Honor," Reynolds lied without blinking. "She became physically combative. I used the minimum force necessary to protect the public. Her injuries were entirely caused by her own resistance." To lock in his story, Reynolds pulled out his phone and showed a short, edited video that only captured the struggle. "Unfortunately, my body can malfunction this morning, but I managed to record this partial clip." "How convenient," Maya whispered from the defense table. It was the first time she had spoken, her voice cold and fearless. Despite her bruised cheek and disheveled clothes, Maya stood up. The moment she did, a heavy aura filled the room that made everyone go quiet. "Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to address the complete fabrications in Officer Reynolds' testimony." Maya's sharp eyes swept across the room, locking onto Reynolds. "First, Officer Reynolds claims I was trespassing, but I was walking on a public sidewalk at 8:47 a.m. As this court knows, under the Supreme Court precedent in Hague v. CIO, public sidewalks adjacent to government buildings are traditional public forums where citizens have a constitutional right to be present. The court reporter stopped typing. Prosecutor Amanda Clark frowned. This was not the emotional rambling of a criminal. This was the sharp, calculated mind of a top legal expert. Maya moved in for the kill. Regarding Officer Reynolds' claim that his body cam malfunctioned, under Rule 106 of the Federal Rules of Evidence, I demand an emergency preservation order for all electronic surveillance data from 8:45 to 9:15 a.m. this morning. That includes camera 7 on the courthouse steps, as well as the automatic cloud backup system for all officer body cams, a system that backs up footage continuously, regardless of equipment malfunctions. Reynolds' face drained of color. His heart sank as he remembered the 360-degree security cameras overhead. Judge Whitmore leaned forward, stammering, "Miss, do you have formal legal training?" Maya offered a calm, terrifying smile. "I have a bit of experience with the judicial system, Your Honor." She reached into her jacket pocket with her cuffed hands and pulled out a small leather credential wallet. "I have my judicial parking pass, my chamber access card, and my official badge." When the wallet opened, revealing the gold-sealed federal judicial badge, Bailiff Cooper, a 12-year veteran of the courthouse, nearly dropped his keys. His eyes went wide, with pure horror, as he recognized the woman standing at the defense table. Court is in recess for 15 minutes. Judge Whitmore slammed his gavel down, his voice trembling, as if he had just seen a ghost. In the holding room behind the court, Bailiff Cooper frantically unlocked Maya's handcuffs, his hands shaking violently. "Judge Vance, I am so sorry. My God, I didn't recognize you in civilian clothes." Maya rubbed her bleeding wrists, perfectly calm, and issued 2 direct orders. Order 1, Cooper, go to my chambers. Get my black judicial robes with the gold trim and bring my engraved wooden gavel, the one that says, "Justice is blind, but she sees all." Order 2, call Chief Judge Evelyn Ross immediately. Tell her to lock down all security footage from this morning and pull every case Officer Reynolds has testified in for the last 5 years. 15 minutes later, the courtroom doors burst open. Bailiff Cooper stood at attention, his voice booming like thunder. "All rise. Court is now in session. The Honorable Judge Maya Vance presiding." The words hit the room like a bomb. Reynolds froze, his jaw dropping in absolute terror. Judge Whitmore practically tripped over his robes as he scrambled off the bench to get out of her way. Maya Vance walked out from her chambers, draped in her flowing black robes, holding her wooden gavel. She stepped up to her bench, sat in her executive chair, and looked down at Reynolds, who was shaking so hard his knees were knocking together. "Officer Reynolds," Maya said, her voice dripping with ice, "you may remain standing." Maya tapped her tablet, connecting it directly to the large courtroom monitors. "Officer Reynolds, let's review the footage from your malfunctioning body cam, shall we?" The high-definition video played on the big screen for the entire courtroom to see. Frame 1, Reynolds blocking Maya's path and hurling racial slurs. Frame 2, Reynolds slapping Maya across the face, choking her and slamming her into the stone wall. Frame 3, the crystal-clear audio from the cloud backup echoed through the speakers. "Filthy animals like you belong in cages, not courthouses." Gasps of horror erupted from the gallery. Maya then played the audio from Officers Palmer and Griffin's body cams, capturing them laughing and calling her a welfare queen trying to scam the system. Then Maya delivered the ultimate blow. "Do you know why you didn't recognize me, Officer Reynolds? Because you saw a black woman and assumed I was uneducated, poor, and powerless. You had no idea that I have been the presiding judge of this courthouse for 23 years. You didn't know I graduated top of my class at Harvard Law, or that I spent 8 years as a DOJ civil rights prosecutor putting corrupt cops like you behind bars." Reynolds looked like he was going to throw up. "And here's the biggest mistake you made today," Maya continued. "For the last 6 months, I have been working directly with the FBI Civil Rights Division investigating systemic racism and misconduct in your police department. This morning, your arrogance handed us the most perfect, undeniable evidence we could have ever dreamed of. Maya opened a thick folder, revealing 15 years of Reynolds' dirty record. 47 formal complaints of brutality and racism, all swept under the rug by his department. 89 arrests, 87% involving minorities, with physical force used in 63% of those cases. 432 cases thrown out due to constitutional violations, a shocking 40% failure rate. $3 million paid out by taxpayers to settle lawsuits caused by his violence. Looking down at the trembling officer, Maya raised her ceremonial gavel high into the air. "Officer Reynolds, this morning you told me to know my place. Well, let me teach you yours." Bang! The gavel struck the block with a sound like thunder. Felony assault in the first degree, guilty. Assault on a federal judicial officer, guilty. Deprivation of civil rights under color of law, guilty. Perjury under oath, guilty. Sentence: 25 years in federal prison, without the possibility of parole. Reynolds' legs gave out. He collapsed onto the floor, sobbing hysterically as federal marshals stepped forward and cuffed his hands behind his back. 6 months later, the justice system was forever changed. Eric Reynolds is currently serving his 25-year sentence in a maximum security federal prison, stripped of his badge, pension, and freedom. 12 corrupt officers were fired, and 4 supervisors were criminally charged. 432 tainted cases were reopened. Dozens of innocent people were freed, and $7 million in damages was paid to Reynolds' past victims directly from the police department's budget. The courthouse was officially renamed the Maya Vance Federal Courthouse in honor of the woman who brought a corrupt system to its knees. This story is a powerful reminder that no one, no matter how much power they think they have, is above the law. When bullies abuse their power, justice eventually catches up with them. What did you think of Judge Maya Vance's legendary comeback? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Hit that like button and subscribe for more unforgettable stories of courage and justice.